Well, some of you may recognize the face you've seen in days gone by. It's good to have Terry Traylor back. Terry was a member here years ago. As a matter of fact, we were still in the house when you were a member, true? Yep. Mm-hmm. If you haven't met Terry, meet him. And hopefully, he's going to be coming here with two little ones. So that's great. It's always good to have those back who's been here before. Where'd you go, Terry?
Well, I was in Arizona for a lot of years.
Arizona.
In North Carolina the past 2 years. Because I wanted to get closer back here. I took a job with Allstate after having worked with Charles Schwab for 18 years. And because of the COVID, they missed to now work full-time telecommute. So I said, I'm coming to Stony Creek.
Well, it's great to have you back, Terry. All right, we're in chapter 11. And we'll hit some of these charts in a very brief way because we've been over that material. And then we will introduce new material. Daniel naturally divides itself into two parts. The personal history of Daniel, plus his interpretation of dreams and handwritings on the wall. Then the second part, Daniel 7, 1 through 12, and the remainder of the book, visions and prophecies of Daniel. The second half of the book contains 4 visions seen by Daniel. The visions of the 4 beasts coming up out of the sea, the vision of the ram and the he-goat, the vision of the 70 weeks, and then in chapters 10 through 12, you have the vision of the time of the end. Notice, please, the way that's worded. It's not the vision of the end of time, as some denominational preachers want you to believe. It's the vision of the time of the end that deals with the end of the Jewish nation. So you need to understand that. Now, we noticed in the 70 weeks, not much historical data was given. The rebuilding of Jerusalem, the walls and the temple, the Messiah cut off, and the destruction of Jerusalem, and that's pretty well it. Now, in chapters 10 through 12, more data is going to be filled in, and that's what we shall view. So you got to keep in mind chapters 10 through 12 is one unit. And chapter 10 describes Daniel's condition while receiving the vision. And you remember the sad shape that he was in. In chapter 11, the Persian kings and the 4 divisions of the Grecian kingdom, the battle of the north and the south, and Antiochus IV, what he did to God's people, and then the Roman government being set up, a Roman kingdom. Chapter 12 deals with the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, in the first 5 verses, we won't say much because we've covered these and we look at you as a very intelligent group of people that can comprehend very well, okay? Also, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. Now, the I sounds like Daniel. It's not Daniel. It is the being in the latter part of 10 representing deity, an angel dressed like the Christ in Revelation 1. Now watch the language. And now will I, whoever this is, that angel, show thee, that's Daniel, the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. Now that's the one that was married to Esther. And this statement is made to show that he's the one that introduced trouble, major trouble, between the Persian Empire, and the Grecian Empire. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. That's why this statement is made. There were more kings in Persia after him. But this is being made to show, hey, here's where the trouble is being started. And a mighty king shall stand up that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Now, I want you to realize that Ahasuerus, that was the one married to Esther, he did what he did almost 150 years before Alexander the Great became king in 336. But the trouble had begun. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. You ever thought about this? He only ruled 13 years. 10 of those years was conquering the world. He never really got to enjoy sitting on the throne, as it were, and ruling as a king. He was too busy fighting wars and things of that nature. And then he died at age 32, almost 33, and then his kingdom is going to be divided. So when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. So he no more stands up till the kingdom's gone, and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity. His sons don't get it. He had 2 sons, both of whom were killed, so that they would not become kings, nor according to his dominion which he ruled. Whoever will be in charge next will not have the dominion he had, the power he had. For his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others besides those. Not going to be his sons. Others will get it. At one time, 7 of his generals had part of the land. But when all the dust cleared, it came down to 4. And that's what the Word of God said. Cassander over in Macedonia, Lysimachus in Asia Minor, Seleucus in Syria, and Ptolemy in Egypt. Now, we're concerned with what the Bible calls the north and the south. And the reason we're concerned is because they're going to do battle for about 150 years. But look where they got to travel back and forth to do their fighting. Right through Palestine, where God's people are located. Daniel wanted to know, what does the future, Lord, hold for our people? Well, God's going to tell him. And it's not good. Now, when we think about the south, Egypt, and the leaders down there, they're all called Ptolemies, 1 through 6. They give to themselves titles to exalt self, such as Soter, which means Savior. See, Ptolemy the first looked at himself as the Savior of the empire and the Savior of Egypt. And then when you look at the northern kingdom, it's a little more complicated, but there's only 2 names, Seleucus and Antiochus. So they go by one of those terms, and they're also numbered. Seleucus the first, the second, and so forth, Antiochus the first, second, and so forth. And so we'll be going through those. Not all of them will be major characters per se, but we'll go through those as needed. And the king of the south shall be strong. That's the Ptolemy down in Egypt. And one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him. He's going to have a prince that's going to be strong above him and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. Now, Seleucus I and Ptolemy I were great friends. Seleucus I served under Ptolemy in Alexander's army. And Ptolemy helped Seleucus fight against one of his enemies. They were buddies. No problem between the north and the south here. The king of the south will gain in strength. Ptolemy I ruled Egypt, etc., from 306 to 284. All these dates are BC. One of his princes will gain power. That's Seleucus, the general, who defeated Antigonus. Now, he ruled Syria, and after he defeated Antigonus, then he gained more ground and more power. But that didn't bother Ptolemy. They were good friends. Now, I want you to watch language all through these verses. They're very important. This battle is going to go on for about 150 years between these different rulers. And we don't see the change in years. It doesn't say like 10 years later, 15 years later, 50 years later. But it will say things like this. And in the end of years, they shall join themselves together. They saw the antagonism they were having one for the other. So, how can we settle that? And they decided to settle it by marriage. Now watch this. For the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. See, she got married. The daughter of the king of the south married the king of the north. But she shall not retain the power of the arm. Somehow she's going to lose power. Neither shall he stand nor his arm. Even the king's going to lose his power. But she shall be given up. And they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in these times. What in the world? Now, do not be misled. Even in the Bible, some of the kings married kings' daughters from another nation to promote peace. Solomon did it. Right here it says so, 1 Kings 3:1. And Solomon made affinity with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and took Pharaoh's daughter. So he married Pharaoh's daughter for affinity or peace, so there'd be no trouble between Pharaoh or Egypt and Israel. That's the way they made peace treaties sometimes. Well, these people are trying to do the same thing. Now, in 248, Berenice, daughter of Ptolemy II, was given to Antiochus II in order to make peace between Egypt and Syria. 2 years later, Berenice's father died. Antiochus II put her away and remarried his first wife, Laodice. Now, Laodice, I'll get that maybe right in a minute. Oh, by the way, there's a city named for her. What was that city? Laodicea. So Laodicea was named for Laodice. Now, can you imagine when this thing was brewing And Antiochus was thinking about, yeah, this might be a good deal for me to take Berenice and marry her, but I have to put my first wife away. Laodice, you know, didn't like that. So, after 2 years, Berenice's father died. Well, what does Antiochus do? He divorces her and takes back Laodice. Well, Laodice took care of that problem as far as she's concerned. She killed Berenice and her son, didn't want him to be king, and she killed her own husband, Antiochus II, so her son could become the king. Now, this may sound strange to you, but if you'll read about the kings of the northern kingdom, they killed each other constantly, trying to become king. So you got that going on here. But out of a branch of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against him, and shall prevail, and shall also carry captives into Egypt, their gods, with their princes, and with their precious vessels of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. What in the world? Here's what it amounts to. A branch of her roots comes with an army. Berenice's brother, Ptolemy III, attacked Syria to avenge her death. He was not going to let them get by with killing his sister. So what does he do? He musters up the forces needed to go up there and to do the northern kingdom in. So Ptolemy III succeeds. Now, anytime you whipped a country, you'd take their gods, their princes, the precious articles to Egypt, silver and gold, and he ruled for 20 years. This might be one of the best victories during this period of time, and no doubt was, and it was out of revenge. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return into his own land. You know what I call that? Very ambiguous. How in the world can you and I figure that out? So you know what you do when a verse is very ambiguous? You do comparative reading. It's only smart to do comparative reading. Now, what do I mean by comparative reading? Take other good translations and see what they say. Notice the difference in the language in the American Standard Version and the New King James Version, which helps us immensely. Now, the black I added, and it's going to be down here in the New King James. And he, you got to have an antecedent to a pronoun as a general rule. The king of the north, Seleucus II, shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but he shall return into his own land. Now watch the New King James. Also the king of the north, that's the note I put up there, shall come to the kingdom of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land. Well, what's that telling us? The king of the north attacks the south, and he failed and returned to his own land. Man, you have them come up there and do to you what was done to you because a sister was killed? well, you feel like going back down there and doing all you can to them, and that's what was attempted, but they were defeated. And they turned and they went home. But after he got home, I want you to notice something. But his son shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces. Well, the king of the north was defeated, but his sons are not pleased with the defeat, and they're going to try to rally the forces. And one shall certainly come, overflow, pass through, then shall he return and be stirred up even to his fortress. Now, the sons of Seleucus II shall stir up strife and assemble a multitude of great forces. And Antiochus III is the one that broke through and stepped up front. He's also known as the Great. Attacked and took Syria back in 221. Now keep in mind, Antiochus and Seleucus should have been the kings of Syria. And they were, to some degree, but a puppet nation, as it were, because they were so defeated by the king of the south over Berenice's death. And so, lo and behold, Antiochus III has rallied the troops. And he's going to try to do something about it, and he does. He takes Syria back in 221. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler. That's anger, bitterness. He can't believe what's taken place, and shall come forth and fight with him, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into his hand. The king of the south shall be moved with rage. This is Ptolemy IV. There's the years that he reigned. He gathered a great army and defeated Antiochus the Great at Raphia in 217. Now, while you got the Grecian forces fighting back and forth with themselves, all the while the Roman Empire is gaining strength. And we'll see that by the end of this chapter. And that will be the Fourth World Empire. And when he had taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s, but he shall not be strengthened by it. Ptolemy the Fourth would conquer the northern area for a short while. This strengthened him for a brief period. He soon loses the land, so there is really no gain. Why is that true? We're told by secular history that after he won the battle, he was content with that. He went back to Egypt and tried to live basically a life of peace and leisure, and he didn't take care of things that he previously had won. And so what happens? He loses that. So he gained no strength by what he had done. For the king of the north shall return and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain days with a great army and with much riches. I want you to notice they spend their time trying to build up an army and riches to maintain the army, to fight against one another. That's what's taking place here. But all the while they're doing this, they're tracking back and forth through Palestine and doing damage to God's people. And Antiochus the Fourth is really going to do damage to God's people. And in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fall. Now the language here that I haven't figured out, and you might know, and we'll give you a chance at the end of the class period. What does it mean, they shall establish the vision? I don't know what that means, unless their conduct and what they're doing is proving that the vision seen by Daniel is 100% correct. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mound and take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. And he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the glorious land which by his hand shall be consumed. Now, the death of Ptolemy the Fourth, or after the death of Ptolemy the Fourth, Antiochus the Great returned with a better equipped army in 2003, and by 198 with the help of Philip of Macedonia and many Jews. Many Jews felt like it was to their advantage to help Antiochus. So they helped Antiochus III, and Antiochus IV is going to destroy him. So they went down there and helped Antiochus and was in complete control of Syria, Palestine, and dwelt for a time in the beautiful land. And of course, that's Bible land. And so there's battles going on constantly. Whoops. He shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom. Now what he wants to do here, he wants to make Egypt a puppet state. Because he's put it on him pretty well. And again, he thinks the way to do it is by marriage. If I can send Cleopatra down there and let her marry the son, then surely that will bring peace and I can control Egypt. So notice, he shall also set his face to enter with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. That's pretty bad. When you give your daughter as a wife, and she doesn't stand with you. She works against you. Antiochus the Great tried to strengthen his kingdom by giving his daughter Cleopatra I in marriage to Ptolemy V. These were teenagers. She is about 17 and he is about 14. But she was wise enough to say to her young husband, you do not want to join league with my father. Somebody else is stronger. You want to make a covenant with Rome. And if you make a covenant with Rome, you'll be wiser. And that's what took place. And that's going to be very important later in the chapter, when Rome comes to the rescue of Egypt, when the north is causing trouble. Well, the king of the north doesn't want to fight the king of the south and his daughter down there. By the way, Cleopatra there, that's not Elizabeth Taylor. That comes later, okay? She was Cleopatra the seventh. This is the first. So you got to realize we're not talking about Elizabeth Taylor there, or the one that, you know, she represented in a film, and Mark Antony. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles. Well, if Antiochus III can't take on Egypt, and Egypt's not that powerful, he's not worried about Egypt anyway right now. He just thought he could make it a state that would be subject to him, and he could do that by giving his daughter. It didn't work. Nah, that's all right. I'll turn toward the isles, and I'll start taking islands out in the Mediterranean and move in that direction. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. A man puts a strong lecture on him about he's not doing anything in the world but trying to build his reputation. And what you need to do is quit and go home. Without his own reproach he shall cause to turn upon him. And that reproach was the name he was trying to build. So Antiochus III then turned his attention toward Asia Minor. This is after the deal in Egypt didn't work with Cleopatra. And Greece, which resulted in war with the Romans. And they defeated him at Thermopylae and Magnesia in 190. They taxed him for the war debts. Now you think about that. They got him under control, and they told him, here's what you're going to do, Antiochus. We're taking X number of your people. We're taking one of your sons. We're going to hold him captive, and you're going to pay back the war debt and all the damage you've caused. Well, you're talking about putting him under tremendous pressure. Now the Romans are taxing him and saying, you're going to pay back all the damage you did. What if the Soviet Union had to pay back all the damage they've done in Ukraine? Man alive, they'd be paying a long time, wouldn't they? And Rome's going to make him do that. Then he shall turn his face toward the fort of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Now here's what's amazing. Antiochus III died in 187 trying to rob a temple in Syria. He was trying to pay war taxes imposed by the Romans. Can you believe that? That a king was killed trying to rob a temple so that he could pay war taxes. What if Biden was killed trying to rob a bank to pay off the national debt? Do what? That's right. There's not a bank big enough. You got that right. Trillions and trillions of dollars we owe. But this is the mess he's in. And he got himself in this mess. Why these four generals could not occupy the land given to them and be content with that is beyond me. Two of them basically did. But two of them were not happy unless they were fighting with one another. So then, that's what took place. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes, in the glory of the kingdom. They got to raise those taxes. But within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. Well, Seleucus IV takes over. He comes to power, and of course he's trying to raise all the taxes he can to pay off the war debt, and he's killed by his own prime minister. He's killed by Heliodorus. Now, Heliodorus, he was out raising taxes. And after he returns from raising taxes for the Romans. So you got one murder after another taking place simply because these people are not content with what God has given them. All right, questions, comments, observations. I know this is tedious, but it's Bible. And we're trying to work through this, and Daniel's a great book. Now, the liberals and modernists say, this can't be right. Chapter 11 cannot be right. It had to be written way after the facts. Why? It is too accurate. It's right on the money. And so these things, someone sat down and wrote after all these events occurred and put them in a book called Daniel. The problem is, this chapter was in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This chapter was in the Septuagint, showing that this chapter was written far beyond the happening of the events. We serve a God who knows the end from the beginning. The modernists and the liberals don't serve that kind of God. But you and I serve that kind of God. Do you believe God's got it right? He's looked out all the way into the future at the judgment and says, I'm sorry, but only few are going to be saved and the majority are going to be lost. You think that's accurate? Yeah, that's accurate. Can you and I become so evangelistic that we can turn that around completely? No. No, we can't. Because God has seen the end from the beginning. That's the kind of God that we serve. All right, any other comments, observations? Okay, Bud?
Today's teaching a lot of denominationalism is Matthew 24, Daniel, and Revelation, and saying that those things are in the future, and that it applies to the United States and China and Russia.
Yeah, they don't apply to United States, China, and Russia.
They're so far out into left field, they're not taking the actual events and the history of what went on back then.
That's exactly right, Bud.
It's like you said one time years ago, and I'll never forget it, if a Christian knows the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, you pretty much know more than most of these people out here is claiming to be preaching the gospel.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't even know the difference between the Old and the New.
One of the things I do, Bud, and that's exactly right. I teach. When I'm doing a jail ministry, a prison ministry, I tell the students, if I say all you got to do to be saved is stand on this table, you know the next thing I want to hear come out of your mouth? Show it to me in the Bible and I'll believe it. Then I show them the difference between the Old and the New Testaments, and once they get that, I tell them, you already know more than most preachers. And that's sad. Hey, thank you much for your kind attention.